January 8th, 2020, Gulfstream Park, Florida. A gray gelding named XY Jet finishes a morning workout. He has won over $3 million in his career. 9 months earlier, he crossed the finish line in the first Dubai Golden Shaheen, collecting $1.5 million in a single afternoon. His trainer, Jorge Navarro, has called him the horse of a lifetime. But just 2 hours after the workout, XY Jet collapses, heart attack, dead at 8 years old. Navarro releases a statement expressing grief. The racing world offers condolences. An autopsy is ordered. And somewhere in a federal building in Lower Manhattan, FBI agents add another document to a file they have been building for 2 years. Because what killed XY Jet was not bad luck. It was a cocktail of performance-enhancing drugs that Navarro himself had been pumping into the horse since at least February 2019. Drugs with names like BB3 and SGF-1000, blood builders designed to push a horse past its natural limits. Undetectable, untraceable, and, in the case of XY Jet, fatal. 61 days later, FBI agents execute simultaneous raids across the eastern United States. They arrest 27 people: trainers, veterinarians, pharmacists, drug distributors. The charges: conspiracy to manufacture, distribute, and administer adulterated and misbranded performance-enhancing drugs to racehorses. The scale: over 1,000 races across multiple years. The reach: tracks in New York, New Jersey, Florida, Kentucky, Ohio, and the United Arab Emirates. At the center of it all stands Jorge Navarro, the man they call the Juice Man. And next to him, fellow trainer Jason Service, whose horse Maximum Security had crossed the finish line first at the 2019 Kentucky Derby before being disqualified for interference. Federal prosecutors would later reveal that Maximum Security was on SGF-1000 at the time, that Service had doped, in his own words, virtually all the horses under his control, that the most famous horse race in America had been run by a chemically enhanced animal whose trainer was actively evading drug tests while the nation watched. This is the story of how a network of trainers, veterinarians, and drug manufacturers corrupted American horse racing for years. How they built custom drugs in unregistered labs, how they communicated in code while FBI wiretaps recorded everything, how they pushed horses past the breaking point, and what happened when the whole system came apart. Horse racing has a drug problem. This is not news. Trainers have been looking for chemical edges since the sport began. What changed in the 2010s was the sophistication. The drugs got better. The testing stayed the same. And a generation of trainers figured out that if you could design a substance that regulators did not know how to detect, you could win with impunity. The key innovation was blood builders. Erythropoietin, EPO, is a hormone produced naturally by the kidneys. It signals the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. More red blood cells means more oxygen. More oxygen means better endurance. Human athletes have been doping with synthetic EPO for decades. The cycling scandals of the 1990s and 2000s brought it into public consciousness. But horse racing regulators were slower to catch up. Testing protocols lagged, and a network of veterinarians realized they could manufacture EPO analogs in private labs, sell them to trainers under code names, and watch their clients dominate the sport. The problem with blood builders is that they work too well. An EPO-doped horse will run harder and longer than its body was designed for. The heart pumps thicker, more oxygen-rich blood at higher pressures. The legs absorb more impact. The lungs strain harder. These are not side effects, they are the point. But when a horse has already had 3 knee surgeries, like XY Jet, and you pump it full of blood builders before a race, the math eventually catches up. The heart gives out, the legs fracture, the animal dies in front of a crowd, or collapses after a workout, and the trainer expresses shock. Jorge Navarro came to the United States from Panama more than 30 years ago. By 2019, he was one of the most successful trainers in America. His win rate hovered around 29%, elite by any standard. He trained horses for prominent owners. He won graded stakes. People in the industry whispered about his methods, but whispering is easy. Proving anything was hard. Navarro knew when officials were coming. He knew which drugs were testable and which were not. He had built, according to federal prosecutors, a doping program that stretched back to at least 2016. His supplier was a Florida veterinarian named Seth Fishman. On paper, Fishman ran a company called Equistology. In practice, he manufactured custom performance-enhancing drugs in a facility that was not registered with the FDA. Blood builders, vasodilators, pain blockers, substances with names like BB3 and VO2 max, and a custom analgesic called the frozen pain shot. Each was designed with the same goal: enhance performance without triggering a positive test. In a wiretapped phone call from April 2019, Fishman explained the philosophy to a customer who asked whether the drugs constituted doping. His answer was blunt. Of course it's doping. The question is it testable doping? He continued, "Do not kid yourself. If you are giving something to a horse to make it better, and you are not supposed to do that, that's doping. Whether or not they test for it is a different story. This is stuff people are using all the time, so no, they are not testing for it." Fishman was not wrong. Racing commissions tested for known substances using established protocols. If you manufactured something new or modified an existing compound, you could stay ahead of testing for years. The FDA did not regulate veterinary drugs the same way it regulated human pharmaceuticals. State racing commissions had limited budgets and limited expertise, and the sport itself had no centralized authority. Each state ran its own program. A trainer banned in New York could move to New Jersey and start over. Navarro paid Fishman tens of thousands of dollars between 2017 and 2019. The invoices were disguised. BB3 showed up on veterinary bills as EPM meds, a reference to a legitimate neurological condition. When Fishman asked a client whether he really wanted blood builder written on the invoice, the client laughed. The system ran on plausible deniability. Everyone knew what the drugs were for. Nobody wrote it down. Meanwhile, Jason Service had developed his own relationship with a different supplier. His drug of choice was SGF-1000, a custom substance purportedly containing growth factors that promoted tissue repair and increased stamina. The manufacturer was a Kentucky-based company called Medivet Equine, run by a man named Michael Kegley Jr. Like Fishman's products, SGF-1000 was not approved by the FDA. Like Fishman's products, it was designed to evade detection. In a wiretapped call, Kegley acknowledged that trainers using his products in America could face felony charges. He sold them anyway. Service was even less subtle than Navarro. In a March 2019 phone call intercepted by the FBI, Service told Navarro that he had been using SGF-1000 on everything, almost. Navarro replied that he had more than 12 horses on the substance. Then, Navarro cut the conversation short. "Jay, we'll sit down and talk about this shit. I do not want to talk about this shit on the phone, okay?" He was right to be nervous. The FBI had been recording it for months. The concealment methods were elaborate. Service hid SGF-1000 charges on veterinary bills under the line item acupuncture and chiropractic. He used fake prescriptions. He worked with veterinarians who agreed to falsify records if a test came back suspicious. On June 5, 2019, New Jersey racing regulators tested maximum security for PEDs shortly after the horse received a shot of SGF-1000. In an intercepted call, veterinarian Christian Rhine reassured Service that there was no reason to worry. "They do not even have a test for it," Rhine said. "If anything showed up, it might appear as a false positive for dexamethasone, a legal anti-inflammatory. Another veterinarian agreed to falsify records to make it look like Maximum Security had received Dex instead of SGF 1000. The cover-up was seamless. Maximum Security never tested positive. But it was XY Jet who became the symbol of the conspiracy. In March 2019, Navarro flew to Dubai with the gray gelding for the Golden Shaheen, a Group 1 race with a $2.5 million purse. What Navarro did in the weeks before that race would later be described in exhaustive detail by federal prosecutors. On February 13, 2019, 1 month before Dubai, XY Jet ran in an allowance race at Gulfstream Park. That morning, Navarro instructed a co-conspirator named Christopher Oakes to visit the barn and administer the drug. He told Oakes that if security stopped him, he should say he was an owner visiting the horse. Oakes made the delivery. XY Jet won. In Dubai, Navarro personally administered what he called monkey, his code word for a blood builder similar to EPO. He gave the horse 50 injections, he later bragged. Through the mouth, too, an oral administration designed to avoid needle marks that racing officials might notice. XY Jet won the Golden Shaheen by 3 3/4 lengths. Minutes after the race, Seth Fishman sent Navarro a congratulatory text. Navarro replied, "Thank you, boss. You are a big part of it." 4 days later, Navarro texted Fishman again, 1,000 pills ASAP. The owners of XY Jet knew nothing of this. They celebrated a victory they believed was legitimate. They collected prize money. They made plans for more races. 10 months later, their horse was dead, and federal agents were executing search warrants across the country. When prosecutors unsealed the indictment in March 2020, they included a detail that had never been made public. Erythropoietin and its analogs can increase cardiac exertion and pressure and lead to cardiac issues, including death. XY Jet had 3 knee surgeries by the time he died. His autopsy could not determine a specific cause for the heart attack, but Navarro's own communications, preserved in FBI wiretaps, showed he had been pushing the horse beyond its limits for over a year. The investigation had begun in 2018 with a different target. Nick Surik was a harness racing trainer who had attracted attention from New York regulators for repeated positive tests for a substance called glycine. When FBI agents put a wiretap on Surik's phone, they heard him discussing doping strategies with another trainer. That trainer was Jorge Navarro. In the conversation, Surik said he had turned to Navarro for advice because Navarro uses that drug like fucking water. The FBI opened a new investigation. Over the next 2 years, they wiretapped Navarro, Fishman, Service, and a half-dozen other defendants. They intercepted hundreds of calls. They built a case that would eventually produce a 40-page indictment and lead to the most significant prosecution of racehorse doping in the history of the Department of Justice. What the wiretaps revealed was not just criminality, it was contempt. Navarro and his co-conspirators did not see themselves as cheaters. They saw themselves as professionals operating in a system where everyone cheated. In May 2019, the owners of a horse called Nanush called Navarro to complain about a series of poor performances. One owner asked bluntly, "Is this horse jacked out? Is he on fucking pills or are we just fucking—" Navarro cut him off. Everything. He gets everything. The owner tried to continue. "You do not have to tell me on the phone," he said. He knew the risks of discussing drugs on an open line. What he didn't know was that the FBI was listening. In one exchange preserved by prosecutors, Navarro received a gift from an associate. The image showed a syringe pulling back, loading itself with dollar bills instead of liquid. It was a joke. It was also an accurate description of the business model. Pump horses with drugs, win races, collect purses. The animals were expendable. The money was the point. The raids came on March 9, 2020, dawn. FBI agents hit locations in Florida, New Jersey, New York, Kentucky, and California simultaneously. 13 defendants were taken into federal custody that day. The remaining 14 were arrested in the weeks that followed. At a press conference in Manhattan, U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman called it the most far-reaching prosecution of racehorse doping ever brought by the Department of Justice. FBI Assistant Director William Sweeney was more direct. What happened to these horses amounted to nothing less than abuse, he said. They experienced cardiac issues, overexertion leading to leg fractures, increased risk of injury, and in some cases, death. The timing was strange. The indictments dropped the same week that COVID-19 lockdowns began sweeping the United States. The Kentucky Derby was postponed, racetracks closed. The public fallout was muted by the pandemic chaos. But inside the industry, the shock was total. Maximum Security, the horse that had crossed the finish line first at the most famous race in America, had been doped. His trainer had been recording drug conversations on a federal wiretap while the whole country watched the Derby. 10 days after the indictments, Maximum Security's owner announced that the horse's $10 million victory in the Saudi Cup would be held in escrow pending the outcome of the case. The money has still not been paid. The defendants fell one by one. Navarro pleaded guilty in August 2021. At his sentencing hearing, he tried to blame the pressure he was under to win races. Judge Mary Kay Viscasil was not sympathetic. She gave him the maximum sentence, 5 years in federal prison. She ordered restitution of $25,869,514, the estimated total purse winnings of the horses he had doped during the conspiracy. She said she wished she could give him more time. Navarro is currently incarcerated at FCI Miami. His release date is June 2025. He will almost certainly be deported to Panama. Service pled guilty in 2023, 4 years in prison. He is currently incarcerated in Pensacola, Florida, scheduled for release in summer 2026. Seth Fishman went to trial and lost. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. He faces up to 20 years. Christian Rhine, the veterinarian who told Service not to worry about Maximum Security's drug test, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years. Michael Kegley Jr., the SGF 1000 distributor, got 30 months. Christopher Oakes, the harness trainer who delivered drugs to XY Jet, got 3 years. More than a dozen others received prison sentences, fines, or both. A handful of minor players had charges dropped in exchange for cooperation. The case had one lasting policy consequence. In December 2020, Congress passed the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, creating a new federal authority to regulate the sport. The law established uniform drug testing standards. It centralized enforcement. It created out-of-competition testing protocols that might have caught Navarro in Service years earlier. The act was signed by President Trump. Its existence is a direct result of the doping scandal. But the fundamental economics of horse racing have not changed. Trainers are paid a percentage of purse earnings. Owners demand results. Veterinarians sell services to whoever will pay. The incentives that created the Navarro conspiracy still exist. The question is whether the new regulatory structure can contain them, or whether another network is already forming, designing the next generation of undetectable drugs, waiting for the next XY Jet to collapse on a track in Florida while the owners collect condolences and the trainers express shock. When FBI agents searched Jorge Navarro's properties in March 2020, they found vials of unlabeled substances, syringes, pills in unmarked bottles, custom drugs manufactured in labs that existed on no government registry. They found text messages joking about doping. They found invoices disguised as chiropractic bills. They found a system so brazen that participants discussed felony drug distribution on open phone lines, confident that no one was listening. Someone was listening. For 2 years, the FBI recorded everything. And in a courtroom in Manhattan, a judge looked at Jorge Navarro, the Juice Man, the winner of over 1,000 races, The trainer who had pushed XY Jet until his heart gave out and told him that the animals under his care had been treated as expendable commodities in the service of his sport. Then, she sent him to prison. Everything, Navarro had said on the wiretap. He gets everything. In the end, so did Navarro. 5 years, $26 million in restitution, a legacy reduced to a federal case number, and somewhere in Florida, a gray gelding buried in an unmarked grave, $3 million in career earnings, and a heart that was never built to carry what his trainer put inside it.